Jackass Forever introduced several new faces when it was released back in February of 2022, and arguably the most popular new cast member is a guy who simply goes by the name of Poopies, also known allegedly as Sean McInerney. The spectacular rise of Poopies seems to have happened at the exact same time as his spectacular downfall. In fact, you could even say that the fall of Poopies began before his rise. Sean McInerney was born in 1986 in Redlands, California, and as fate would have it, he attended the same elementary school as Jackass star Preston Lacey. Like many rebellious skater and surfer kids of the early 2000s, Poopies grew up heavily influenced by CKY and Jackass videos, which glorified a cool new lifestyle of just doing dumb shit in front of a camera and getting paid for it. Then one fateful day, Sean was with his surfing buddies when out of sheer boredom they dared him to do something stupid so they could film it Jackass style. He happened to really need to poop at the time, so the idea was he would go do it at a nearby public intersection as his buddies watched from nearby. So that's exactly what he did. Sean put on a gorilla mask and gloves, then proceeded to poop in a public street. Unfortunately, this did not work out well for him because the police were immediately notified. He was given a citation and the officer called for his father to come pick him up. Sean's father wasn't mad though. In fact, he expressed to him that it was one of the funniest things he had ever heard of. At that moment, Sean realized that his own father actually supported what he was doing, and at the age of 15, his friends gave him the new nickname of Poopies, which he absolutely hated. Unfortunately, his new nickname essentially ruined his life, at least for a little while. Soon word spread of Sean's new nickname and he was bullied because of it. He even admits to losing out on dating girls after they found out about what happened. It became so bad that he ended up dropping out of high school and no longer wanted to be associated with his group of friends. Sean met future Jackass producer Trip Taylor when he was 16 years old while doing stunts for a reality show that never happened. This became key in his future career. Poopies worked in construction until being fired for wrecking a tractor. Then he worked as a drug mule, smuggling drugs between the US and Mexico by having it strapped to his body and making about $2,000 for each run. He worked at a marijuana farm for a few years before eventually moving to Hawaii, hoping to finally escape the Poopies nickname that he would later embrace thanks to his Jackass fame. While in Hawaii, Sean met Jamie O'Brien and scored paid work for his Red Bull show beginning around 2013, traveling the world filming 8 seasons of stunt work for a YouTube series called Who is J.O.B. He also began producing his own stunt videos for his YouTube channel known as the Poopies channel. His most popular stunt video from the Red Bull series is when he once surfed down a sewer drain. Red Bull's YouTube videos featuring Poopies are now exceptionally popular, garnering tens of millions of views as of the time of this video. In fact, his sewer drain ski video currently has over 19 million views, thanks mostly to his popularity from Jackass Forever. Unfortunately, Poopies was not paid very much for his time working with Red Bull. He was paid by a third-party talent agency and has no share of the ad revenue from those videos. However, the exposure he received from the Red Bull series would later pay off massively in other ways, by bringing him social media attention and eventually to the attention of the Jackass crew. Sean was contacted by Jackass co-producer Trip Taylor, who remembered him for being a crazy stunt performer from their past work together when he was just 16 years old. He was evaluated by the Jackass production team and eventually chosen to join as a new cast member for Jackass Forever. He was quickly tossed into the inner circle and grew particularly close to Jackass star Steveo, who is featured in many of his YouTube videos from the time period in which Jackass Forever was still in production and he still had a fully functional left hand. It was obvious that Poopies and Steveo were very close compared to the other cast members, and that Steveo had essentially taken him under his wing as far as his future stunt career was concerned. That was until 2021, when despite the obvious risk, Steveo did not step in with his years of experience to prevent Poopies from performing a stunt that would change his life forever. Poopies was asked to perform a ridiculously dangerous stunt for a Discovery Channel Shark Week promotion for the upcoming Jackass film. Being the new guy, he of course agreed to perform the stunt, which involved being pulled by a jet ski over a ramp and jumping over sharks like the Fonzie did in a popular episode of the TV show Happy Days. But then it all went horribly wrong. The inexperienced driver of the jet ski did not go fast enough, and Poopies ended up falling into the shark-infested waters below, directly into a pool of hungry sharks. He was subsequently bitten by a shark and almost lost the entirety of his left hand before he could swim away. Even worse, the amount of blood he was losing in the water could have quickly ended his life. Luckily, there were medical personnel on set for the film who saved Sean's life by quickly retrieving him from the water, controlling the bleeding and rushing him to a hospital. And just as a side note, the raw footage of the accident can be found on the Poopies YouTube channel along with his own detailed account of what happened. I encourage you to check it out and support him by doing so. He was quickly flown back to the United States where an orthopedic surgeon was able to reattach his hand. The Jackass crew immediately celebrated the fact that Poopies didn't completely lose his left hand. Unfortunately, reattaching your hand doesn't mean that your catastrophic injury has magically gone away. Jackass director Jeff Tremaine later admitted that the stunt was too dangerous to do in hindsight, but the damage was done, and at the age of just 35 years old, Sean would never again regain the full functionality of his left wrist, hand, and fingers. Poopies has offered some updates in the years following his injury and has openly discussed the healing process of his hand, which has not gone so well. He suffers from chronic pain and is completely unable to bend his wrist, even several years after the injury, which means that it's permanent. Thankfully, he was able to get back to surfing and living an active lifestyle despite not having a fully functional left hand. Ironically, the shark bite that nearly cost Poopies his hand is now what he is best known for. In fact, Sean McInerney is officially the only person in the world who has ever been bitten by a shark during filmmaking. Poopies has suffered the most serious injury of any Jackass member, with the only other potentially life-threatening injury being a blood clot suffered by the late Ryan Dunn. Ryan's injury occurred in 2006 during the filming of a Jackass 2 grand finale scene where he was pulled off camera by a horse and a rope attached to his feet. But in Ryan Dunn's case, the injury happened late in his successful career, which made the stunt pay off financially at least. Unfortunately, that was not the case for Poopies, who has now publicly acknowledged that he was paid next to nothing for his work in the Jackass Forever film.
I have a sour taste in my mouth about Jeff Tremaine. He only gave Poopies, the new guy, $35,000 of a movie that made $100 million in the box office.
Steveo has publicly stated that if you are lucky enough to be featured in a Jackass film, then they really shouldn't have to pay you. He does have a point since name recognition and popularity can be monetized if you use it wisely, but Poopies has not done so. Unfortunately, Sean's life after Jackass stardom has not been easy. Not long after the premiere of Jackass Forever, Poopies became seriously addicted to drugs and alcohol. Most notably, on one occasion, Poopies bought cocaine from a stranger he met on the street, which ended up being laced with fentanyl and resulted in an overdose that was nearly fatal. But once again, Poopies cheated death and was saved. He woke up in a hospital and was very lucky to be alive. Unfortunately, the reality for the Jackass franchise is that many of their members have suffered from very serious issues with drug and alcohol addiction throughout the years.
Fans and stars of MTV's Daredevil series Jackass are remembering Ryan Dunn, who gained fame on that show.
Ryan Dunn famously perished in a devastating car crash as a direct result of driving drunk, and Bam Margera still struggles to this very day with addiction. The good news is that, as of January of 2024, Poopies has publicly stated that he is now clean and sober, and Steveo has publicly supported his recovery. Despite having a moderately successful YouTube channel and the Jackass film on his resume, Sean still struggles severely with financial stability. He spent his Jackass paycheck on a new truck and openly admits that he's not very smart. Poopies is broke. In fact, according to Poopies, he was once so broke that he was living out of the back of a rented U-Haul truck until one of his friends stole it and returned it back to U-Haul. His friend smoked a bunch of drugs and decided to take off in the truck. It is unknown if his friend did it maliciously or was just trying to help Poopies out by returning it. To the credit of Steveo, Poopies has been featured on the Wild Ride podcast many times and even had bookings on his comedy tour.
You don't have Poopies merch already?
Steveo has asked his supporters on many occasions to help support Poopies by giving him views, cameos, and buying his merchandise.
Heartbreaking. That whole situation remains. God, it's tough.
Nowadays, Steveo seems to understand the full gravity of Sean's hand injury and his subsequent drug abuse and growing financial problems. Which should be the case, because the downfall of Poopies is arguably the direct and or indirect result of the Jackass Shark Week stunt that never should have happened in the first place.
For my British fans, Elton John is a talentless diva.
To demonstrate just how broke Poopies was, Steveo put out a hilarious video showing all of the ridiculous cameos that Poopies was willing to do for money. However, the honest truth is that much of the financial turmoil in Poopies' life stems from his own mistakes. He wasn't paid hardly anything for his Jackass Forever work, but he could have capitalized on his own personal success if he had just focused on the hard work. In fact, Steveo has publicly urged Poopies to use his Jackass fame for pushing his content and selling merchandise in a more professional and disciplined way so that he can make money. Poopies has expressed interest in hosting his own podcast, but as of the time of this video, that doesn't seem to exist. In 2023, Poopies began participating in a podcast called The Shittiest Podcast with Poopies, which was operated by a company called Straw Hut Media and seems to have stopped uploading episodes around August of the same year. The brutally honest description of the podcast on Apple.com mentions that Poopies was the worst podcast host ever and that Straw Hut Media was helping him out just because they felt bad for him. These days, Poopies posts surfing and other stunt videos to his YouTube channel. He seems to be living his best life despite his hand injury. Poopies recently moved to Austin, Texas, and is currently engaged to get married. And hopefully guys like Steveo help keep Sean on the path of sobriety. Be sure to check out the Poopies YouTube channel and support him by viewing his videos or maybe even buying his merchandise. He deserves it.
What do you think is going to change about your life once this movie comes out?
Well, one thing that I think is going to change in my life is the fame. But, you know, I don't let that get to me, dude. I just want to be by the beach surfing and chasing chicks my whole life.